My name is Buscher, and on this episode of Life as a Christian Author, we're going to talk about being careful about what you write because it can come back to haunt you. Now, I know that in many of my videos, especially on this series, and if you've ever met me in real life, I'm a real advocate of people writing a book. It doesn't matter if it's a real simple, quick book or a really long book. I believe that, we live in a day and age that, we have a wonderful opportunity to write down our thoughts, that we can leave a piece of our life that is going to be there for hundreds of years, if not a lot longer. We have no idea. But along with that, we have no idea the effects of the things that we write. If you've read any of my books, and this is not a sales pitch by any means, but if you want to buy one, go ahead. If you've read any of my books, you'll notice that I try to be brutally honest in a way that most people might be embarrassed if they were the author. To the point where one of my series is, called My Confession, and that's exactly what it is. It's a confession of my crimes and my sins, of all the ways that I have fallen short of the glory of God, and things that I am utterly embarrassed about. And when I wrote my first book, that was something I really had to think about. Do I really want to put this out there for the world? Do I want the world to know the type of person that I was? And if you watched a video where I'm explaining that book, I mentioned the fact that, God really laid it on my heart that if I'm not honest about that, then why would anyone believe me about the gospel of Jesus? But along with that comes consequences. There were a lot of people that at the time were, people that followed our ministry that, thought they knew me. And when they read my book, I guess they realized I was a lot worse of a person than what they imagined. And some of them, dropped off. And other people, they saw it and they got encouraged by it. And but you have to be careful. You have to be careful what you put out there. You have to make sure that every time that you type something on that computer, you can live with that the rest of your life. You have no idea who's going to read this book. You have no idea who's going to read what you wrote 20 years from now. Before you release anything, you need to stop and you need to think, is this the image of myself I want to portray to the world? When I started writing my books, it was because my wife was pregnant with our first child, my son, Noah Thomas. And I wanted to be able to share with him a little bit of who his father was and why his father believes in the gospel of Jesus. I don't know if I'm going to live, for another 60 years or if I'm going to die tomorrow. I don't know. I don't know how much time the Lord is going to give me with my beautiful son. And I want him to know who his father was. I want him to someday maybe be watching one of these YouTube videos or reading one of my books and say, wow, I'm in kind of a similar situation and I, can learn something from this. But in the same way, there's been some people that have read some of this and it got affected the wrong way. One thing that I chose to do in some of my books is I changed people's names. I put a disclaimer in front of my book saying, the situations are true, the events are true, but some of the details in the person's appearance and, of course, their name has been changed to protect their identity. And I do that because I don't want to hurt somebody. I did that the very first edition of a book that I released. I didn't think about that. And they didn't like the fact that I mentioned a couple of the stories of our drug history together many years ago. And so I quickly took that book down, tried to get all the books out of the circulation. Thankfully, I caught it in time before it, sold a lot of copies. And I changed the person's name and I changed their description and they were perfectly fine with it. But before you write something, I want you to think about that. Obviously, your situation probably isn't the same as mine, but remember this. Remember, everything that you are writing down, everything you're doing on social media, everything is going to be seen in future generations. Be thinking about this before you release your work. If maybe you already have a book out there and you didn't think about this, think about it again. Maybe release another edition if that is your situation. Otherwise, I encourage you, release a book. Write a book. If you need help writing a book, I love to give people advice. It's so easy in today's world. I help authors all the time from the United States and here in Brazil release their first books and give them some pointers. I'm a big advocate of books. So I want to thank you for watching this episode of Life as a Christian Author. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Good luck and God bless.